My name is Britney. I'm 28 years old, and I never imagined I'd be strapped to a stretcher gasping for air while my parents refused to come to the hospital because they were busy taking my sister's cat to the vet. The doctor's voice was urgent over the phone. "Your daughter is in critical condition," but my father snapped back. "We can't make it. We're dealing with our other daughter's cat right now." My mother chimed in. "She'll be fine. We'll stop by later." They never showed up even when the doctor warned it might be my last night. This wasn't the first time they chose my sister over me, but I swore it would be the last. A week later, when they finally dragged themselves to the hospital, I was gone. All I left behind was a letter on the empty bed. I heard from a nurse their faces turned pale as they read it like the ground had dropped beneath them. They had no idea that letter was just the start of a plan I'd been building for years. Lying there chest tight fighting for every breath, I realized I was done swallowing their neglect. This time, they'd face consequences for picking the wrong priority. It wasn't about crying or begging, it was about making them see that ignoring me came with a price. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know what time it is where you're watching and what city you're in. I'm thrilled to see how far my story reaches. Drop a comment below, hit like and subscribe if you've ever felt overlooked by your own family. Growing up in our suburban Chicago neighborhood in a colonial house with a big front porch, I learned early that my place in the family came second. My parents always had their eyes on my younger sister 3 years my junior, while I faded into the background. When I was 8, I won first place at the school science fair for my model volcano. I ran home clutching my ribbon heart pounding with pride, only to find Mom and Dad cheering as my sister practiced her dance routine in the driveway. "That's nice," Britney Mom said, barely glancing at my ribbon before turning back to clap for her spins. I told myself it was fine. Dance was flashier than a science project. By middle school, the pattern was clear. I brought home straight A's and Dad would nod. Good job then, spend dinner raving about my sister's B in art class like she'd painted the Mona Lisa. When I made the regional spelling bee at 13, they promised to come but bailed because my sister had a dance recital the same day. I stood on stage scanning the crowd for them, my chest tight, not just from nerves but from my asthma, which was starting to flare up more often. I'd been diagnosed at 10 with severe allergies to cat dander that could trigger attacks. My parents treated it like a nuisance. "Just use your inhaler," Mom would say when I wheezed after a flare-up, her tone sharp as she rushed to my sister's next event. Their favoritism wasn't just about attention, it hurt my health. Doctor visits for my asthma meant Mom sighing about missing my sister's dance rehearsals. Once when I needed the ER after a bad attack, Dad grumbled the whole drive about the cost of my meds, while my sister, healthy and carefree, got new dance shoes that same week. I started making excuses for them. She was younger, needed them more. I could handle it. But deep down, I knew it wasn't right. At 16, I began keeping a notebook jotting down every time they dismissed my health or achievements. It wasn't a plan yet, just a way to make sense of the unfairness. I'd write March 12th, missed my debate win for her costume fitting. My friend Nicole, who I met in high school, saw it too. "They're not fair to you," she said once, flipping through my notes. She offered to snap photos at events my parents skipped, like my honor society induction they missed for my sister's recital. Those notes became my anchor. By the time I was in high school, my asthma attacks were more frequent, worsened by stress and cold Chicago winters. I'd hide in the library, inhaler in hand, writing down how Mom brushed off my doctor's warnings about allergens or how Dad said my hospital stays were overdramatic. Nicole kept helping, saving texts I sent her about my parents' excuses. "This could be useful someday," she said, her voice serious. I didn't know what she meant, but I kept documenting every missed milestone every time my health took a back seat. It felt like collecting pieces of a puzzle I didn't yet understand. When I was 18, I won a scholarship for my essay on community service. I was thrilled, thinking maybe this time they'd show up to the ceremony, but they didn't. My sister had a minor cold and they stayed home to make her soup. I stood alone accepting my award, my chest tight from disappointment and a brewing asthma flare. That night, I added to my notebook, May 20th, a scholarship ceremony. They chose her cold over me. Something clicked. This wasn't just neglect, it was a choice repeated over years. I looked at my growing stack of notes, photos, and texts Nicole had saved. I wasn't sure what I'd do with them, but a fire started burning inside me. They could ignore me all they wanted, but I was done letting it slide without a record. By the time I hit college, I was used to being the invisible daughter. I moved out to a small apartment near my university in Illinois, about 40 miles from our suburban Chicago home, close enough to visit, far enough to breathe. I worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a coffee shop and another tutoring to cover tuition and rent since my parents told me they could only afford to help one of us. My sister, not exactly a scholar, got their financial support for her community college classes. She dropped out after a semester claiming it was too much pressure, and they bought her a new laptop to cheer her up. Meanwhile, I kept my 4.0 GPA juggling shifts and asthma meds, which cost me a fortune without their help. My notebook grew thicker entries like October 3rd, parents paid her tuition, told me to get a loan. Nicole, now my closest friend, started saving my emails about their excuses, building our evidence pile. My asthma and cat allergies were a constant battle. Cold Chicago winters made my lungs ache, and stress from work triggered flare-ups. I'd email my parents about doctor visits, hoping they'd care, but got replies like, "We're swamped with your sister's dance competition, use your inhaler." I saved every email, every dismissive text in a folder labeled family. Nicole would read them and shake her head. They're clueless about how serious this is. She said, scanning a message where Mom told me to tough it out after a bad attack. My doctor had warned that prolonged cat dander exposure could send me to the ER, but my parents acted like it was a minor cold. I added those warnings to my notes along with hospital bills they never offered to help with. Then came the cat. 2 years ago, my sister decided she wanted a pet, not just any pet, but a purebred Persian that cost $3,000. My parents, knowing my allergies, didn't hesitate. They paid for it, named it Mittens, and turned their guest room into a cat palace with custom bedding and a heated perch. Mittens became the symbol of everything wrong with our family, their obsession with my sister's whims over my survival. I emailed them pleading, "I can't visit if the cat's there, my asthma can't handle it." Mom's reply was curt, "Take your meds, Britney. She needs this cat for her happiness." I saved that email too, my hands shaking. Nicole snapped a photo of it on my phone. "This is proof," she said. "They're choosing her cat over your life." I tried to keep the peace-limiting visits to avoid Mittens, but every time I called to suggest meeting at a cafe, they'd insist I come home because my sister wanted to show off her pet's new tricks. "It's just a cat," Dad said once, rolling his eyes when I mentioned my inhaler wasn't enough. I started avoiding their house altogether, but they'd guilt-trip me. "You're being selfish. Your sister misses you." My notebook filled up entries like January 15th told me to visit despite allergies, said I'm distant. Nicole kept encouraging me to document everything, even suggesting I record calls. I didn't go that far, but her support made me feel less alone in this fight. Last summer, I hit my breaking point. I called to plan a family barbecue, hoping for a neutral space. Mom agreed, but when I arrived, my sister had brought Mittens to the backyard. "He loves the outdoors," she said, laughing as the cat rubbed against her. My chest tightened within minutes, my inhaler barely helping. I confronted them. "You knew I'm allergic. Why is the cat here?" Mom shrugged. "It's just for a few hours, don't make a big deal." Dad added, "You're always so sensitive." My sister just petted Mittens, oblivious. I left early wheezing and wrote in my notebook, July 10th, barbecue cat brought despite warning attack started. Nicole met me later, furious. They're reckless, she said, saving my text about the incident. I looked at her and said, I'm done begging them to care. That confrontation lit a spark. I wasn't just documenting anymore. I was building a case to make them pay for their choices. Last month, after months of avoiding their house, I got a call from Mom inviting me to a family dinner. We miss you, Britney, she said, her voice warm. I'm making your favorite pot roast. I hesitated, my notebook full of reasons to say no, but a part of me still hoped for a real family moment. I double-checked my meds, popped an antihistamine, and drove the 40 miles to our suburban Chicago home. I told myself to stay calm, focus on the food, and get out fast if Mittens was there. Nicole texted me before I left. Be careful, keep your inhaler handy. I nodded to myself, clutching my notebook in my bag, a record of every time they'd chosen my sister over me. Walking into the house, the smell of pot roast hit me, but so did a faint whiff of cat dander. My chest tightened. Is the cat here? I asked, spotting my sister on the couch stroking Mittens. Of course, Mom said like it was obvious. He's part of the family. My sister grinned, lifting the fluffy Persian. Look how cute he is now, sis. I stepped back, already wheezing. You know I'm allergic, I said, voice steady but firm. We talked about this. Dad waved it off. Just take your pills. It's one night. My sister kept petting Mittens, oblivious, as the conversation turned to his new organic diet and vet appointments. I tried to join in, mentioning a teaching award I'd just won, but Mom nodded absently, then asked my sister about Mittens' latest tricks. Halfway through dinner, my breathing grew labored. Hives crept up my neck. I excused myself, grabbed my inhaler, and stumbled to the bathroom. Staring in the mirror, I saw my red eyes and swelling skin. You can do this, I whispered, but my lungs disagreed. I texted Nicole, bad attack cats here. She replied instantly, get out now. I returned to the table, barely able to speak. I'm having a reaction, I managed. My sister frowned. You look rough, sis. It's just allergies, right? Mom sighed. Don't be so dramatic, Britney. I stood, grabbing my bag. I need to go. Dad shrugged. We haven't even had dessert yet. I drove myself to the ER, each breath a struggle. By the time I arrived, I was nearly unconscious. Nurses rushed me in, injecting epinephrine and hooking me to monitors. Dr. Thompson, my allergist, asked about the trigger. My sister's cat, I wheezed. They knew I'm allergic. A nurse. Heather looked shocked, noting it in my chart. I called my parents from the hospital bed, voice weak. I'm in the ER, it's serious. Mom's reply came through. We can't come now, we're taking Mittens to the vet for his checkup. I tried my sister next via video call. She was cuddling Mittens. Sorry, sis, he's got an appointment. Feel better. The screen went blank. I stared at my phone, rage mixing with pain. Nicole arrived, furious. They're unbelievable, she said, squeezing my hand. Dr. Thompson pulled me aside later. This is neglect, Britney. I'm documenting it. Your parents were warned about dander risks. A social worker called by the hospital interviewed me about my family's pattern of ignoring my condition. I showed her my notebook, years of entries, emails, texts. This is enough for a case, she said quietly. Lying there, monitors beeping, I realized I had grounds to act. My parents' choice to prioritize a cat's vet visit over my life wasn't just hurtful, it was reckless. I started planning I'd report them to animal control, using their obsession with Mittens against them. If they cared so much about that cat, let them face scrutiny for its care. I'd also pursue legal action for endangerment with Dr. Thompson's records and the social worker's report. Nicole nodded as I whispered my plan. We've got evidence, she said. Make them pay. As I drifted under the meds, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just a letter, it was a blueprint for justice. After stabilizing, I spent my final hospital days writing a letter. It wasn't a plea, it was a reckoning. I poured out years of neglect, every ignored achievement, every dismissed asthma attack ending with their choice to prioritize my sister's cat over my life. "I'm done being invisible," I wrote. "You'll see the cost of your choices." I sealed it, handed it to Heather, the nurse, and asked her to leave it on my bed after I was discharged. "Make sure they find it," I said. She nodded, her eyes steady. "I've got you." Dr. Thompson gave me a new treatment plan, warning that another cat exposure could be fatal. He handed me a signed report detailing my parents' refusal to come labeled medical neglect. I added it to my notebook. I was discharged a week after the crisis. Nicole picked me up, driving me to a pet-free apartment I'd found 30 miles away in a quiet Chicago suburb. "Stay with me until you're settled," she insisted. Mrs. Patterson, my new neighbor, a kind widow who'd heard about my ordeal, brought over homemade chili and offered to feed my fish while I recovered. "We look out for each other here," she said. I felt a warmth I'd never gotten from my family. Nicole helped me unpack, and we reviewed my evidence, years of notes, emails, photos, hospital records. "Time to move forward," she said. I nodded, pulling up the local animal control website. In a twist, I reported my parents for neglecting Mitten's care, ironic, since they'd chosen him over me. Their cat palace lacked proper ventilation, a violation I'd documented with photos from past visits. The report was anonymous, but it would spark scrutiny. Next, I posted a vague but pointed update on our community's social media group. Some prioritize pets over family in emergencies. Grateful for friends who show up. It spread fast. My school principal, who'd seen my teaching award, messaged me, "Heard about your hospital stay. We're here for you." Parents of my students sent cards, some stopping by with coffee. Meanwhile, Anthony, my sister's boyfriend, texted me. "I saw how they treated you at dinner," he wrote. "They're obsessed with that cat. I've got texts from her bragging about skipping your ER call for Mitten's vet." He forwarded them more evidence for my case. I contacted the social worker from the hospital, sharing my notebook and Dr. Thompson's report. This could support an endangerment claim, she said, starting an inquiry into my parents' negligence. Days later, I got a call from animal control. They'd visited my parents' house, citing improper pet care conditions. My sister posted a frantic rant online blaming nosy neighbors for the report, unaware it was me. The community group lit up. People whispered about my parents' priorities, their perfect family image cracking. My principal invited me to a staff meeting where colleagues clapped for my recovery. "You're stronger than they know," he said. I felt a surge of pride, not from pleasing my family, but from building a community that valued me. Nicole grinned, saving screenshots of the online chatter. "They're starting to feel it," she said. "My parents tried calling, but I let it go to voicemail." "Britney, this is ridiculous," Mom's voice snapped. "Why are people talking about us?" I didn't answer. My sister texted, "You're stirring drama, sis." I ignored her too. Anthony sent another message. "She's freaking out about the investigation. I'm done with their mess." His support sealed my resolve. The animal control case and social backlash were just the start. I was working with the social worker on a legal filing for endangerment, using Dr. Thompson's records and my notebook. As I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by cards from my school, I knew the real consequences were coming. My parents and sister were about to learn that their choices had a price, and I was no longer the one paying it.